to put that on the record very early. I think more of us need to send that message reminding all of us that, listen, one of the main things would be the number of persons that are hospitalized that require health care. And I think we should be very, very mindful of that. That is one thing. The second thing I want to place on the record, too, as we await Mr. Greene's arrival, is that this weekend past, we celebrated. You can social distance over this. So what happened? 3 feet? We're working on 3 feet? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, yes, you would have heard the ruckus because, you know, he's a very disruptive influencer. Don't understand educated that's so disruptive. He's a very disruptive. He come and the whole something done. And I was just about to make a point that I don't need him to comment on yet because it's not his time yet. That over the weekend, on Saturday to be precise, the greatest school in the universe, he going to challenge me just now with some other information, celebrated 65 years. 65 years of providing education to Antigua and Barbuda. And I normally I would do a nice historical overview. I haven't yet. I invite you to stay tuned to my Facebook information page, Petra Williams, the Spectator, because it will be coming shortly. Certain people were tardy with providing me with some of what I needed. And notwithstanding that, I just wanted to remind all of us that Princess Margaret School is 65 years old now, or young. How you go, old or young. And it still remains the greatest, undisputed institution in Antigua and Barbuda today. The world is in need of good men and women. That is not really how I wanted to introduce this man because there's so much more to him than just that part. But in studio with me this afternoon is Dr. Mr. Greene, what's your full name before I say it?
My name is Collin Everton.
So simple? Just Collin Everton?
A lot of British names.
Yeah, you're very prim and proper. With me in studios this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I can try my British accent, is Dr. Collin Everton Greene. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you
We're
doing?
testing your levels. Is he sounding better? I don't know. You can hear. You have to check through the mic.
I'll give you the
Can hear me?
principal's voice in a little bit now.
Yeah, I'm not ready for the principal's voice yet. Relax. Okay. And Mr. Greene I'm so pleased to have you. I mean, you've been here a number of times with me, no?
Yes.
You almost can co-host.
Well, the amount of Zoom that I'm doing over the last couple of weeks, I'm very much competent at being host and co-host and all that. I'm all zoomed out.
Okay. Why you zooming so much? You're talking to your students?
I've been talking to my teachers, my students, everything gone Zoom, full Zoom.
So in other words, you're still managing what you need to manage as per usual.
Yeah, and you know, down at Point FM, people like to send WhatsApp and say who not working. I'm just making it clear I working. And my teachers are working. And are working very hard. So all them people who like to send WhatsApp to say who's sitting and are doing nothing, I'm making it clear on Point FM that my teachers are working and I am working. I'm not sitting at home doing nothing.
Well, at least we know you're zooming.
I'm zooming.
Mr. Greene, we're not beginning your story today with Princess Margaret.
No.
Okay, good. Who are your people? Where your bloodline, your parents? Tell us, share a bit about your parents for me.
Well, I'm from Willie Keys. My father.
Wait, you're from that fish eye place?
Let us get into sensible conversation this afternoon.
Sorry, sorry, yes.
Yeah, born and raised in Willie Keys. My father's name was Samuel Greene. Mm-hmm. My mother is Geraldine Scott. Grew up in an area of the village that they call signed as the lower area of the village. And so
when you say the lower area, like when you're coming up from
on entrance, just before you get up that little rising.
Okay, the area like where Sean and so come from?
Sean come from top of the hill on the other side.
So you're on the other side. Okay, all right.
I'm on the main road on the right hand side.
That's the one other person beside you I can use for context.
Yeah, on the right hand side. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
The family line is very simple. All the colors in Wilkies are related. So whether you're brown, white, green, all of us are related one way or the other. My mother's people, I think, are from English Harbour, the Scots. Yeah, and so my other family line, my grandmother's people are Curwans. Yeah, so that's where we are.
Curwan is Antigua name?
Yeah, my grandfather was my great grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Is a man named Percival Curwan. Mm-hmm. Had several daughters, one son. So You don't hear a lot of that name locally now, but my traditional family name, my maternal family name is Kerwan.
Okay, all right. And your parents, what did they do? What did they do for a living?
My mother worked in the hospitality industry for years. She worked the old, what is now the Pineapple Hotel, when it was Horizon. And then she worked in Millview for years with the Melons. She's more of a chef type of thing, cooking and them kind of things. My father was into agriculture, basically.
Okay, all right. How was it? How you had siblings? You have siblings?
Yeah,
How many?
I have 6 sisters, 2 brothers.
Okay, big family. How was it growing up in Willikes?
Well,
back then. No, tell me about before we get back to the community life, the family life, share with me a little bit about what the community spirit was like. I was listening to Maxine just before me, and she was talking about church and the importance of church and so on. Was church important in your growing up?
It was a traditional way. You went in the morning, went in the night. That's how it was. And if there was an afternoon, you're going to that. It's just a part of the community. I think back then it was a close-knit community. Everybody was involved in everything. And there was a tone of respect for the older ones in the community that pervaded the whole of the community. And when there was something good to celebrate, there was everybody there to celebrate it. So all the elements of life that was there, sports, cricket, football, basketball, the whole likes, all of that was there. We predominantly spent a lot of our time in the sea. And it's a fishing, at the time when I grew up, it was a fishing village. We spent a lot of time out on the beaches on the northwestern side, Spencer's Bay. So, yes, everybody there could swim, and like all of those, I spent a lot of time fishing and diving and all those kinds of wonderful things. That's how my
so you can swim?
I can swim probably better than I can teach and be a principal.
I just want to make sure there are communities that have fishing tradition where many people can't swim. No, I have to ask.
I can swim, I can fish, not just swim and fish, real fish.
You can real fish?
Real fish. Okay, I spend nights on sea, no banks, and I know that I could have a second career in fishing. But I think my first career was fishing, and then I switched to teaching.
I think we're going to hear more about the fishing as we go along.
Yeah, I grew up like that. But I also want to say, I like to tell people that I learned to lead on those same Bayside shows. That's where you lead. That's where the first university of leadership I entered was in the halls of the village.
Explain.
Well, listen, you couldn't, if you go on a Bayside with 100 boys, or they bathe in all kinds of other activities taking place, you better learn to be tough early. From marbles to hunting cherries to sugar apple trades and so on. Who's gonna pick the first side in playing cricket or in football. Yeah, leadership is on display down there, and you have to be bold. If you're physically smaller than others, you have to learn to impress the others how to follow you. And school was like that too. Leadership and courage and all of that were the qualities that were there. Action. The designated leader from each section of the community was there. You know who they are, whether they voted for them or not. You know how the story went.
But I hear you say leadership, but you mentioned for sure that you were good at the fishing side. So what about the sports? What sport did you play besides leading the people children? Well,
I played all the sports. Well, yeah, I played football for Wilkes. Well enough.
You played for Wilkes football team?
Yeah, I captained Wilkes football team for a number of years.
But it could have been that you're captain because you're a good leader. It didn't have to be that you're a good player.
Calm yourself down.
I am asking.
I am one of the fastest right wingers they have in the village for years. Real speed. I played basketball for them. Actually, wasn't as good as basketball as I probably was at football, but I was good enough to make the team. Then I transitioned to coach. I coached the team for a couple of years in the first division. In basketball, first division. I was a first division coach. Yeah, so I've done a couple of things. I can play cricket. Was not very interested in playing cricket for a long time. I played cricket.
But cricket is our first sport in Antigua.
But you have to have common sense. The last time I played competitive cricket was for State College. I was on that undefeated team, State College.
I don't understand that.
But it was more dangerous to practice than to play in a match. There's a real fast people in that team.
So okay. You know your role.
If you weren't going to make that a living, why risk it? So I cap out to that. If it's not softball, I'm not playing that.
Okay. You mentioned that you came from a large family. How was the home life? And I'm speaking in terms of growing up back then. your father is in agriculture, your mother is a hotel, that side worker. In terms of being able to, was your family well off? Were you low end? How was life? How was the meeting of needs? Were you, as a child, did you feel deprived of anything necessarily?
No. In fact, we were never deprived of anything. First, we taught about contentment, and then you're talking about different kind of environment, really, you know. There's a reggae song I like to listen to. I don't know who sing it, but there's a line in it that I like. It says, poverty not real. The poverty is what you make it. Now, the community that I grew up in, it was very difficult to be hungry because every family in that community had what was the correct term for it was a grung. So everybody did. People talk about backyard garden.
Is a grung?
That not several. Not just a big plot of land you're talking about where you produce a commercial crop and you also produce subsistence crops. So you'd have probably a big grung. At the time when I was growing up, cotton was first the cash crop. So you produce cotton. Cotton was very big in that, the cash crop. And then you had another part of the ground that produced your carrot, your cucumbers, your melons, your potatoes, your yam, all that you would need, your corn and so on. And everybody had a part to play in that. So, hungry, poverty, not real. You had everything that you needed to survive. And then you could go across by the beach. You get your fish. Matter of fact, I never realized that lobster was
a delicacy?
A delicacy until I come big man, because what happened used to happen in those days, the fishermen used to actually give away the lobster. They just throw them to you and crave the fish. So no, we never felt deprived of anything. Life was bountiful in the things that we had. The things that I see people buy now, I would never buy. I go market and see people selling tamarind. What stupidness is that? Why would I buy tamarind?
Because we have become mature society.
I'm not buying tamarind, I'm not buying cherry, I'm not buying no sugar.
You have time to pick anything yet, still, Mr.
Up to now, I still pick all kind of things. We just go down by the bayside and I have cherry tree in my yard.
So you have cherry tree in your yard?
Yeah, lemon.
Slow down. Let's take it one at a time. There's cherry tree in your yard now.
Yes.
And cherry in season.
Yes.
And you come and order your too long hand. You so busy you go Zoom that you don't bring me nothing. We will talk about that tomorrow. Yeah. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
So I never felt deprived. I actually felt blessed. I look back to that all the time. As the way that we grew up was good. Even where education was concerned.
Slow down on the education there a minute. And I wanted to emphasize that because you hear often that people talk about, a lot of people have said growing up back then, life was hard. And we're talking about the late 70s here?
Yeah.
Late 70s, early 80s?
Early 70s, late.
Early 70s.
Yeah. Early 70s, late 70s. I have made a good old. But the point is, I can remember things some way back and since I was like 4 and so I'm 2, 3. My head kind of good like that.
So tell me something that happened when you were 4 that you remember. Just one.
At 4, I was already on the bayside swimming. I could swim before I went to primary school.
What age you went primary school?
5.
What primary school you went to?
Wilkie's Primary.
Oh, okay. Just checking. So you went to Wilkie's Primary, and from there you went on to.
I went to Pierce Secondary.
Okay. How was how was school life for you?
Oh yeah. For me, school was always a wonderful place, more so for the socializing. I like school more for the socialization aspect of it. So I was always eager to go.
We didn't send you to socialize.
Well, no, but socializing is a big part of school.
I'm just saying.
It's one of the areas that make you want to go there.
True.
Because if it's not something that's fun and likable, why would I want to go?
So yes, you socializing at peers.
Yes, but it was a little bit more than socialize, because back in them days, if you had crazy parents, you could socialize, but you better do the rest of the work. I used to tell my students all the time, I have never been afraid of any principal like I was afraid of my mother. That woman was a wonderful criminal. I love her.
Yeah? She was a what?
A wonderful criminal. She done state out the law how the story go. That she's sucking salt for you to go down there, you better not go down to go waste time. And she'll tell you early, no make nobody call she. Unless it's for a good thing, just not let them call she. So if the school call her, if it's for commendation, you better say early it's for commendation.
Or else.
What I mean now is,
I'm asking.
Yeah, what I mean now is you get yourself started out.
Before, no. When I say or else, so like you're home and she gets a notice that the school wants to see her. You get in trouble because some parents just spank the children
just in
before
case.
They go to school just in case.
Yeah, well, she was like that. Well, the notion was, the first question is, what the school want to see me for.
Okay.
And you better be good enough to tell her what the school is going to. Until I was 14, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother.
Okay.
Who to me was a liberated thinker and encouraged freedom of speech and not being afraid of anybody. The notion of making sure. So if my mother wanted to do something and she felt that there was an explanation, she had a way of saying, listen to the boy, let the boy speak. Hear his side.
Thank God for grandparents.
So so it's like it was like that. So school for me, you look forward to a number of wonderful things. Like the school bus will get you there early, maybe a little after 7, and you look forward to playing cricket before school start. So it would be a test match between Wilkies and Bethesda, and that test match will run for a whole week, depending. You start it before school, you run it during the break.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You run it during the break time, that sort of thing, and it continues. And then when it was time for work, it was time for work.
Slow down. So you guys played a cricket match for more than a day?
5 days. And
so it'll start on the Monday and finish the Friday?
It starts until when it finished. So
please explain. Please to explain.
And you'd have rules in between. So let's say Wilkies is playing against Bethesda Test. The match starts in the morning, but just before school, and then you resume during the break time. When the bell goes, you close off and you come back again. So if 2 men out on the first day, 3 men out, you continue until one side bat. And so sometimes some people who was playing in the first team didn't come to school on the next day. So you had a rule as to how
you would treat that?
Yes, man. How you treat a hit and so on. How you could play for another person and so on. If one man was short. All them kind of rules is going on there.
And where was all of this recorded? In Manhead?
But we know the rules. The rules were set right now, and you knew what the rules were, and you dare not confront the rules. If you were to be bad-minded and start a game, you might get more lick than John could read about and didn't know where it was coming from. So everybody was clear on those kinds of things. We enjoy those elements, and then you go in your class, you get the work done, whatever is going on there.
So tell me about you and the academic side now.
Well, for school,
back at school time.
I think I did well in school, but there was always that you're intelligent youngster, but there was always a but. I don't understand why there was a but until I probably became a little older and realized that what happened to me is that I was probably challenging the system. And in some cases, I was probably a special ed child, and they didn't cater for them kind of things. Me and special on the other side. I had a way of challenging administration. And systems that I thought wasn't working, I would tell you that I don't think it was working. So
was that a common thing back in those days?
Well, I don't know if it was, but it was just natural to me.
Let me rephrase. To the best of your recollection, were other students with you on challenging whatever processes the teachers and the principals would have been laying down?
In some elements, yes, because when we got together and we speak, but sometimes, when you're leading, you alone have to know where you go forward, if nobody behind the view. So let me give you an example. When I got to first form in school, they said at the time boys were supposed to do building tech and girls do home ec.
Right.
I was excited about doing the industrial arts, so I went. But after a couple of months, I realized I just didn't have the aptitude. So I started demanding that they switch me over to home ec. And the principal just let me know two-man crab can't live in a hole, and she's the only man in the school. You either go down there and do it. But then I recognized what was happening. I was kind of embarrassed. On the right-hand side of the school in the academics, I was doing exceptionally 80s, 90s.
Right.
And every time I went down to building tech, it turned to like zero. To tell you the thing was to do a practical in building tech, they gave you 15 bonus points to start. Yeah. And before the test started, I don't lose bonus by. So
how?
Because I just never could have played the wood according to the grain. Everybody else was playing in the same way that I was playing in. They say it wasn't to the grain. I couldn't get the plane to measure. I didn't sharpen the blade right. My workstation wasn't whatever it was. And you know what happened? I just started giving trouble so that they could say that the reason why I was failing was not because I couldn't do it, but because I was just giving trouble.
And nobody called your mother?
Well, 1 or 2 times. But then again, what would happen is that whatever punishment,
you were prepared to take it.
just that, and I call my mother.
Oh, so you would take the punishment at school to ensure that they didn't call your mother.
Yeah, and then there were teachers who had these crazy ideas of writing things on people's report card that didn't make sense. So sometimes you get 80%, and some very well taught out teacher go on and put on the report card, can do better. Now, what is that?
You didn't get 100. That is fair.
What is that? So my mother would look at the report card and just see 80 and say, okay, can do better.
Bye.
You're farming fooling the people in school.
Yeah.
So right now I'm very conscious, no commendation, not even say very good work, and then say room for improvement, just say can do better. And then one of my siblings will get 50 something, 6 something, and nothing happened to them because the teacher say well done, and then some bright teacher go on and put can do better on my report, and I get cuffed down for that. So I went on.
But were they lying? Couldn't you do better?
How do they know what I can do?
Okay, as a principal now, don't you know when students can do better than what they're putting out?
As a principal, I don't make the same mistakes. I tell you to work to your full potential.
But if I'm not working to my full potential, then what happens?
Well, that's you.
Okay.
But then my argument is this. You say to a number of people, listen, the argument that I'm speaking about is that people you need to comment first, right? Mm-hmm. You need to comment and then move forward.
So you would want them to say, you would have preferred for them to have said, okay, very good, the 80 score, room for improvement.
Miss,
you think your mother would have seen all of that? Or she would just see the...
Let me tell you something, right? Even today in conversation with parents, you have to be diplomatic, and sometimes they test, you know. Because some parents try to live their dreams to their children. Child get 90 something, and parents come school making argument. Oh, can do more work. How much 90 something you ever get?
You actually ask parents this?
Yeah, especially if I know them and we went to the same school. Well, 90 something you ever get? Just please, you never get no 90 something. Go buy the child a gift. But the point
Mr. Greene.
Yeah, but commendation, we now recognize and listen, all theories of learning.
Listen, hold on, you're going too far. Come, we're going back down. We're back in Pierce Secondary School.
Yeah, I did.
So how did you, so then, just because you're a educator, and sometimes they're all spheres to education, what you left Pierce Secondary School with? Make your children mind your business. How well you did? When
my subject?
Yeah.
I did well enough.
You remember?
Listen,
what
as I said,
enough?
hold on, listen to me. Hold on, let me explain to you how the story go.
Hey, I'm an interviewer.
For me to go back now, right?
You can't remember?
No. My children may ask me that all the time. How much subjects you had, Daddy? And I have to go back to go count. So, and my wife is probably more diligent than me to go in the chest that has the certificate and call it out. Right? When I went to school, school was kind of bad-minded. It wasn't divided into arts and science. They just tell you bright people do everything. Okay. So they would say, oh, okay, you're doing history, English, maths, science, you're doing physics, chemistry.
And you passed them?
No, I passed on physics. Because the physics thing wasn't making sense.
Is Mr. Who taught you physics?
No, a brilliant teacher actually taught me physics. A VSO teacher, a man named Mr. Oxable, taught me. But the system, the system was at the time disenfranchised people. So you hear people now talking about disenfranchisement of students like it started with COVID. No, it started long time.
Listen. No dropping word on my shoe.
No, it's the truth. Okay? Let me give you an example. When I went to Pierce Secondary School had perhaps some of the best physics and science labs because it's a new school with Canada.
Right.
But no physics teacher.
What?
So, thank you. So, all the physics teacher in Tongue. But I didn't even know where Tongue was. But the bottom line is...
So how you knew all the physics teachers were in town if you didn't know where Tongue was?
Because somebody come tell me if I want to do biology, me need to go grammar school. What is that? I don't know where grammar school was. My parents had no money for buying a bus. Me walk to school and walk back, and the school bus money me double it up by begging a ride the afternoon and morning. But what I was saying, let me give you an example of why sometimes you see people can be disenfranchised, right? The physics teacher came to our school when we were in fourth form. The latter part of fourth form, and he said those who wanted to try the subject could try, but he was indicating that it would take about 3 years. It would have been a three-year course. So
in fourth form?
No, it would have had to be from about third.
Right, fourth and fifth.
So those who wanted the challenge, we are down the latter part, so it would take a little more than a year to do the course. And many of us started, but we recognized that it wasn't probably going to go the way we want. But some of us persevered. I can remember one person who passed from the class. I can remember, there might be others. A colleague of mine, my good friend, a guy named Andrew Matthias. He's now the electricity
engineer, manager at APA.
My breadwinner.
Also a long time. He doubled in them something.
My breadwinner. But what I'm saying, right? That became his professional line.
Right.
How you gonna be engineer without physics?
That is true.
So what I'm saying, we don't even know how many engineers they disenfranchised.
That we lost because
they put in place rural lines that don't make no sense. So that is what I was saying. That is what I'm saying. They say, I'll give you an example. I have a cousin of mine. We started doing accounts in third form. They up and transferred the accounts teacher to high school and left us midway, right, with the introduction of the subject. Many of us, but people like me at the time, if no teacher there, I'm not doing the work because I was the normal out of order child. So we'd move a motion not to do no work, all in favor, say aye.
Slow down. You moved a motion?
Yeah, we moved a motion, all in favor of not doing the work, say aye. And move all the ones who not in favor, say aye. So, but in that class, there had a cousin who decided he going to continue doing the accounts by himself and
Praise
teaching
the Lord.
himself. You know Dr. Collin Greene, the pastor?
Yes, the pastor, yes.
Yeah, that's my first cousin. Yeah, but he was a different disposition from me. He was always a
We can tell. He seems
nice,
very disciplined and very decent.
I've always been decent.
He's
was a nice,
disciplined and decent.
Decent young man.
We'll just leave you at decent.
He continued and passed the accounts and went on to do A-level studies and so on. Before he went across to theology, he was in banking for a number of years. So I'm just talking about education is about creating the opportunities and equal opportunities. But I'm saying a long, long time.
Could I play something on the record? Because I heard you say the disenfranchisement was country and tongue.
At the time, for me, it was...
Because I went to tongue school, and they used to move our teachers to other schools.
Yeah, maybe to another tongue school.
I'm just saying. So I'm just letting you know that there was disenfranchisement
the point I'm making, there was disenfranchisement.
I agree with you.
Long before COVID, because I hear a people about it.
We're not dropping what?
To who?
Anybody. Okay. No. So next point. After Peer Secondary, where you went?
I went to Antigua State College. I went A-levels. And when I went there, I was a pure art student. History, English, economics, that kind of thing.
How was your state college experience? How did you and Doc get along? That is, anybody that goes through state college on Dr. Alistair Francis, especially if you are a Princess Margaret School student, I can tell you how it went. But if you're not a Princess Margaret School student, I'm curious. How was life under Dr. Francis?
I don't know. I don't know if it was just life under Dr. Francis or the nature of sometimes what I'd probably like to determine as educational prejudice. People used to judge you based on where you come from, even though they didn't know you. I held my own at State College. I found friends who had mutual reason to stick together and combine together. What I found at State College, the early stages when I went there, who your parents seemed to be of significance, and I didn't like that too much. When I went to A-levels, for a couple of weeks, you used to wear your old school uniform.
Yes.
Until you get the
A-levels uniform.
Back in the day, A-levels was the big thing. You put on an A-level uniform, you were like an academic superstar. And determine what uniform you had, they either take you seriously or not seriously.
You mean the uniform before the A-levels uniform?
Yeah, your school where you're coming from.
Okay.
And I remember one time, for like a couple of weeks, the lecturer just didn't bother with me, right?
Oh,
because my uniform didn't seem to match her.
But it wasn't khaki. It wasn't khaki and white you were wearing.
Yeah, but no.
But khaki and white is good stock.
Keep quiet. Let me explain what I'm saying. So they didn't bother you because they didn't think you were from grammar school or something. So I remember one day, I was in the class and she was asking a question. I think it's about satire, and if anybody understood. And I was in the corner. And all them little town people who trying to make an impression, chatting some foolishness, that nowhere close to what the answer was. And then she said, you mean to tell me nobody in this class knows anything about satire? And nobody, so I said, but put up my hand, so I said, you never asked me nothing. So when she gave me the chance to speak, I started from Animal Farm, going way back to One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. And I gave her a lesson in satire, and she said to me,
you read? Hope she didn't ask you.
You from grammar school? I said, no, ma'am. I come from a school called Peer Secondary, and I was exceptionally taught by a woman named Veronica Gordon. So I had good teachers in school.
See? So there you go. So
Exceptionally good teachers.
So then the discrimination clearly was, and the disenfranchisement was not as you would like us to believe.
I think in a general sense, what I also tell students though is that school is not the end of anything. School in many ways is a start. And if school didn't give you the things that you want, you need to go get them. So for instance, the offerings that I did at Pierce, some of it wasn't the kind of offerings that we have now. There's a much broader offering. So there are some subjects that even after I left school, wasn't on offer while I was in school.
Right.
And I needed them to go where I was going, so I had to go pursue them. By that time, I could pursue them on my own. And so the combination of subjects that I have acquired over the years is far much more than I started.
Slow down. So you can't give us these generalities and don't let us get in a little deeper. So you're saying you finished Peer Secondary, you went on to sixth form, A levels, and while you were there, whatever path you decided you needed to pursue, you needed to get some additional stuff, and so you went and pursued them on your own.
So let me give you an example.
Right.
When I went to Peer Secondary, social studies was not offered as a CXC subject.
Right.
We were the first group of people who did CXC.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
We did a half and half. We did half of the subjects we did with CXC, half we did with
GC, Cambridge.
But some subjects, so for instance, social studies wasn't there. So when I got into teaching, into teacher training college, I realized matter of fact, I started teaching social studies as a subject in school. Because, you know, the content from social studies is taken from...
You started teaching social studies as a subject in school when? After teacher training? Or
no, before teacher training.
Okay.
Because I could teach the subject because social studies draws its content from different subject areas.
That is correct.
Right? So I'd done history, I'd done economics, and if you're sensible, you just read a book and figure out how to teach children. So I started teaching it that way, and then I decided, but listen, this might be a way I wanted to expand my field. So I began...
After you were teaching, then you took it up as a subject.
I took up that, I took up POB, whatever needed to be
taken. As in at CXC?
Yeah.
So you took it while you were teaching it?
Yeah, because it wasn't taught as an individual subject while I was in school.
Okay.
So I added that to my repertoire. In fact, I started teaching as a...
Slow down. You keep jumping ahead of me.
Okay.
I am still I have time. So you're at A levels. You completed A levels.
Well, before I completed A levels,
right. I took you back there.
Listen, I was a pretty good student there. Did all the things people were supposed to do. I was a member of the national debating team and them kind of thing. Wrote arguments very good, but just didn't fit the picture of the model boy that they were looking for, because I would challenge leadership if need to challenge leadership.
So surprised.
So I was a part of that grouping, but in some ways not a part of the culture, if you understand.
Because you weren't from the right place.
And I'm not sure. I think sometimes even in debating, some of the teachers who supervised that process felt that some of the language is a little flamboyant. And
your language?
Yeah, the way I wrote.
Was a little flamboyant?
Yeah.
Little?
So they say.
Okay.
But
is it anything like what we know today?
I don't know. I think I'm more tapered now.
Okay. If you say so.
Tempered now. I'm more tempered right now. But the bottom line is I had all those experiences, made some good friends, did what I had to do, and left. The principal and I had run-ins because I don't think my greatest influence at State College was the principal, though. I had other people who taught me. For me, one of the better influences I had was a guy named Rodney Edwards Sr., if you know him. He was the head
That's their musician's father?
Yes, his father.
Okay.
And he's originally from Willie Keys as well, too. But I just found him to be a very brilliant man. He taught me history at A-levels, and at that time he was the head of the A-level department. I remember him talking to me a lot. He said things that I didn't understand at the time, but I understand now. He said, Mr. Greene, you know, the mark of an intelligent man is whether he dot his I's and cross his T's, but you do neither.
And that does not sound like it was a compliment.
No, I think, and then he said, you do neither, but yet still, I still have you in that category of intelligence, so you're an exception to the rule.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
To me, he was a good influence, and there's a man who taught me English literature, a Guyanese man named Brewster. Yeah, Mr. Brewster. Mr. Brewster must be know the definition of every word in the dictionary without even flickering. He was that good. He was a good, very good teacher. I don't know.
I think that's a guy in his trade too.
He was a solid teacher. So at State College, I had good teaching, very good teaching. A lot of the classes were under the tambon tree or some part in the alcove or in a part of the class. But we had really, really good teachers, and I'm grateful for that.
Okay. One of the things that I wanted to reflect on at this time is because you said that you said that you could fish. Well, you can fish perhaps better than your chosen path now. So what were you doing with fishing? Were you still involved in fishing when you were in sixth form, post sixth form? Would you go out and fish commercially or just for the family?
Mixture. It was a hobby. It was a way of life. Some of my very good friends, one of my better friends, and I still go fishing. I don't do it as much as I used to, but it was just a way of life. My bigger brothers spearfish, and I would go with them from time to time. It was a way of making money. I made good money from shooting, and it was a way of life. So I did that up until long after I was married. I'd go up to the time I was married and had children. I'd go to sea for long periods of time. Yeah, so it was just a way of life.
When you say long periods of time, you were teaching. Where you get long periods of time? I mean, on the weekend?
The weekend, you go out in the afternoon, you spend all night, do what you're doing. Combination of whatever fishing is there. If you're doing line fishing, you go up on the north side, you're fishing for red snapper and them kind of things. It was a way of life. We know what we're doing.
Okay. So when you say way of life, did it supplement your teaching salary, or it was just that it was there to be done?
No, by the time I was teaching, it didn't supplement my teaching salary. Right. It was something that you go out, you if you catch 40 pounds of fish, you give some to your mommy, people, the family, you give some to a friend, you give some. And by the time I got married, you'd give some there and some there, and you carry home
the rest
to the wife and cook it over and try to give the impression that you know what you're doing. But it was like that. Never meant.
So tell us about your early teaching years. Where did you first teach?
Yeah, I began teaching at Pierce Secondary first. So I went back to the school I came from.
Right.
But I spent a very short time at Pierce Secondary. Shortly after that, I was transferred to the Potters Primary, which is a strange kind of. I moved from secondary to.
What did you do?
Nothing. I didn't do nothing.
Oh, just making
They just
sure.
needed. In fact, one of the better things that has ever happened to me in teaching, because I don't think I would have been the same teacher had I remained in a secondary school. I think real teaching, the real ability to teach, some primary school people probably get rolled into that even better. To me, it was a good experience. At the school, I got good mentors, people who guided me through the process. And I started there, then I moved on. I moved to the Potters Primary.
So tell us about, because you said that there was a good foundation. So you were a teacher.
Yes.
Regular teacher. You taught a number of subjects. You taught a particular class.
Originally I started, that was attached to the post-primary section of the school. But I also had responsibilities of assisting with some of the primary section as well.
Okay.
That's what was timetabled. When I got to Potters, Vincent Lewis was my principal. And you had people like Paula Francis Spencer, who retired as the language arts coordinator. She was a teacher on staff. You had people like Valerie Brown. You had Cliffane Roberts.
Mr. Terrific?
Yeah, Mr. Terrific. He I felt was an excellent teacher, much better teacher than a politician. But he did a really good job. He used to man the grade 6 class. And back in them days, is one teacher teach all subjects. It's not now people specialize in, he take down the whole down and you know you belong to him. You had Rachel Ford, I think she's from Villa area too. She was one of the teachers there, and you had Gritley O'Garrow and so on. You had people like Karen and Lake and so on. But what?
So at that time, because you went in to teach, you spent a short time at Pears and you went over to the primary school. How was it in terms of being mentored? Was there like a mentorship program? Did other teachers help you along?
There wasn't any official mentoring program, so to speak. But I think the culture of teaching at the time was that each one help one as you go along. So the person who was in charge under the post-primary would guide you along. But that didn't stop anybody else from assisting you. So for instance, I remember all the time the late Gritley O'Garrow would see me past me in the class. I had problems writing on the board. So I tried to get the letters to go straight. They just weren't going straight on the board. And she passed it and said, hello, don't know right on board. Sort yourself out tomorrow. That's what she mean by that. But the next morning she came, she took a ruler and she ruled it's on the board.
Okay.
And they had a way of writing on the board that just looked picture perfect. So I had to learn just even that. So you know now. Then somebody would say, listen, preparation is important. Somebody will take you through the curriculum, sub-details, and sort you out how you approach. Somebody like Paula Spencer will tell you how you teach writing, how you how to teach writing. So it's not just
you can teach writing?
Yes. In that you just tell children, go write a composition. No, writing is a process.
Oh, I thought you meant actually hand.
Of course, they teach handwriting. I did penmanship right up into fifth form.
It didn't help.
Yeah.
And
so
it helped you?
No.
Okay.
But the point I'm making is that you had people who showed you. And that day, what I learned early at Potters, I had it from my blood from peer secondary because as a student.
Right.
But what I learned at Potters, though, was that the spirit of the school was very important, and the teacher being a part of the process, the wider process of the school was a big thing. So it wasn't just you go in and teach a class and come out. No, the sports, there was a big thing.
Back then? In a primary school?
Bacchanal, real drum set, real rocos.
This was in the 80s?
Yeah, well, I started teaching in 1986.
Okay.
And you know, that competition, the choral speaking competition, literally elements among the schools was big. The festival of choirs was a big thing, and you had to get yourself, as a young teacher, you know, get yourself involved. You can't stand up on the line. I was a blue house man at Potters. I'm still a blue house man at PM.
So unfortunate.
So the point is you got involved. So I learned early that you needed to get yourself involved. I give people the joke all the time. When I was at Potters, I tried to start a football team. And
at the school?
Yeah, I started football. I realized that nobody around there seemed to have had any idea about how to kick football. So we start from scratch. We get our white T-shirts. We buy, these days we bought the dye. And you know, you throw the dye in the bucket, in the water boiling, and throw in your salt and so, and we dye it, and they cut out the stencils and we put on the number and so on. And I remember the first day I tell you how to wear boots. Some man come in some big working boots.
You telling people to wear boots?
Lord have mercy. And so we practiced a couple of sessions. We started from scratch. Our first game was at East Bus Station, the St. John's cricket field.
Right.
First game, I'm on the sideline. I look like a real coach now. In my nice tie and sudden, and I had a briefcase in my hand because I had to go catch the bus to go home. And when the ball kick off, the whole of the people on this team said, Mr. Greene, what to do? So I said, kick the ball. Oh, God have mercy. When we finish, we get 24-0. So the next
Who you
day,
played? Do you remember?
I can't remember, but I know we get 24-0. But the next match we had to play was back at East Bus Station. And when I came off the bus, there must be nothing less than 1,500 people on the line waiting to see the Great Potters team. By that time,
why are we waiting to see the team? Let's get 24-0.
But that's why people came. But the goalkeeper asked me, hold the ball. I said, hold the ball. Listen here. I tell you that by the second match, we got 20.
Oh, you were coming down. What? Okay, cool.
By the end of the season, though, we got a regular 15 or 16. I don't think we won a game.
Hold on. By the end of the season, you were getting a regular 15 or 16. And the students were still showing up to play?
How? But we improved. Some got the right shoes and so on. I remember the last game I had with that game was at Golden Grove. And there was this youngster who played football for, I think his name was Darren, played football for Empire. Nearly murdered away, but at least it was Golden Grove. Nobody was out there to see it. So, but the bottom line was, right, I left them about 16. But when I left and went to college, the game continued. And I remember one time when I was in my second year at State College, our team was playing a game at East Bus Station. None of those students who were playing, they knew me.
Right.
But I sat under the tree and watched them. And there was big celebration. They had just won their first game.
From since you were there?
Yes, and they were celebrating and carrying. Nobody there knew me.
But you felt good.
I felt good. We started something.
Yes, that is
so
important.
that's the element of teaching. So we understand how that was.
So how long you stayed at Pickett before you went on to?
I spent 2 years at Potters. Went to college.
Sorry.
When I came back from college first, I was transferred to Bethesda Primary.
So when you left State College, that's where I knew you first, from State College. I was in A-levels at the time. And you mean disgusting. Because there's no way that I am in A-levels should know anybody in teacher training. Make sense?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to.
I wasn't talking to anybody. You were there. You were disgusting.
I wasn't.
What?
By that time, I was
rephrase. You were noticeable.
I was a mature leader.
That didn't make you any less disgusting?
No, the system needed changing.
So what did you do when you were at teacher training?
We orchestrated a movement to implement change. And so the principal...
Mr. Greene, let's try again.
The principal...
What movement and what change did you orchestrate and implement?
We felt that some of the rules there were against natural justice.
One example, please.
So we had a little thing about offerings, and the principal felt he could tell big man what to do or whatever rather than following the rules. The other way of saying you break the rules at the college, but nobody ever gave you the rules. You didn't know what the rules were.
Okay.
And I had a problem with that. How can I break something you never gave me? How can you tell me I don't know what these rules are?
Whatever the leadership says the rules are, the rules are.
So it flared up, and it flared to a point that he expelled the whole class. My teacher training class of 1990, was actually expelled, was kicked out. And then the whole class is out. Then the ministry intervened.
And you were reinstated.
We got lawyers and so.
And you could tell me and I'm getting in trouble.
And we got reinstated. Did well. A lot of those people from that class who are still in education.
Our principals.
Yeah, we had administrators.
Yes, I'm looking at my mind flashes.
We had administrators now. People like Sanja Felix from Villa.
Miss Felix was in that year? I don't remember.
Yeah, Miss Felix was my big friend.
Miss Felix was peace to the dead.
Yeah, Miss Felix was my big friend. Anyway, so
good afternoon, Miss Felix.
Miss Felix used to hang with me. Okay. I used to show her the rope. That time she newly came from Dominica.
Okay.
She didn't know how to catch big boss. So I had to show her around. That's my good friend. That's my good friend. And she was living in Wilkie, so we used to hang all the time. Me and she would go around. We come down together on the bus. Yeah. We had a nice sense of camaraderie.
Who else?
From that grouping. Foster Roberts.
Yeah, I remember. Mr. Roberts was with you giving trouble, wasn't he?
Yeah, first time when I went to school right through, from secondary school, from first right through.
Mr. Roberts was with you giving trouble, wasn't he?
We were friends, and we still are friends. Then you have Nita Robinson from JT Ambrose. She was.
Good afternoon, Mr. Roberts.
She was in that. That grouping as well. That I know. Administration. Donald Joshua at Parham, who's now an administrator as well. Desiree Antonio.
You don't want to tell us what was that particular matter that you all felt you all needed to challenge the system for?
Yeah, we talk about rules and so on, regulations being put in place for everybody to follow. That's basically.
So it was a general thing. It wasn't anything specific.
Technically, if you put it in a nutshell, it had to be about a voice and student involvement in the management of a tertiary institution. Okay, yes. That's basically what it was.
We were just in A-levels knowing that something was going on.
Which is now the norm. Which is now the norm. It's an accepted norm. Which tertiary institution you go and you don't have guild and all them kind of stories.
Correct.
So we were ahead of the game, really.
That is correct. So you went back into school. You said your first school post teacher training was
Bethesda.
You went back home, went back up east.
I went back, and that time I started working with Austin Josiah, and that was another type of mentorship with leadership, because he crazy. He just do all kind of stupid.
Pot call kettle black.
So
no,
that's where perhaps I got a greater role in learning to lead.
Pot call kettle black.
Yeah, because sometimes it's just say he's going somewhere for a day. Mr. Greene, you're running the school. I was a young teacher.
Weren't there other teachers there that had more experience than you?
Yeah, but you might get the experience today.
Okay.
So he may say, Petra, I want you to run the school today. For the next 2 days. But the next time didn't mean,
that will always be you. Okay.
So in normal readings now they call it they call it succession planning.
Okay.
In big books now.
So that's what he was doing there.
Yeah. I know now that's what he was doing
okay.
there. Yeah. And so we were running a post-primary school, and in Bethesda school, I think the creative arts of me, the writing ability and so came into full gear. I started teaching there using the music and the poetry. I had one of the most vicious choral speaking choirs ever around. So I started writing for them, and with them started writing songs, music, and to diversify the offering. The same thing, at the sporting offerings at the school was powerful for a little country school. I think one of the greatest junior cricket teams that I have ever seen assembled came out of Bethesda at that time.
Junior cricket team?
Yeah, cricket, yeah. Really good.
So they were playing cricket not only at the secondary level, but at the junior level?
Well, they were, secondary school is categorized into two categories.
Right, the junior, secondary, and right.
Yeah, and we had some fast bowlers there, real fast now. The young fellas see them running off and back off.
And just out?
Oh, yeah, them boys real fast. I remember a guy named Goldwyn Prince from Seaton, they call him Boaster. He actually played cricket I know he played for West Indies, eh? Yeah, people like Winston Sprocket, Roberts, and so on.
Yes,
both of them, him and Kevin Roberts, the brothers. Yeah, both cricket and football, all national players on either front. So, you had some real talent. Gavin from Bethesda, Tong.
Gavin Tong, yes.
And you had him, and he had a bigger brother named Oliver Tong, who was just as talented.
Okay.
So you had a number of young, talented people there. And in those days, sometimes it's the teacher that have to go with them. You have a supervising teacher. And yeah, so we had good times there. But I think for me, the most remarkable element for me in teaching at Bethesda was the use of the creative arts to teach. And I began teaching a technique called teaching with rhythm and rhyme. Because what I found was that a number of the students, they endear themselves to singing, to poetry, to drama. And they would remember things through that medium. And so I started using that medium and started documenting it to teach them. And what happened, the performance in the post-primary exam just
improved
tremendously. So when I started studying with the University of West Indies, Mona, and I started expressing some of those techniques, the then professor said, "Do you know what you're doing is novel?" I asked, "What do you mean by that?" I didn't write no book. She says, "No, what you're doing is a new technique," and they wanted to see if it was real. And so she came to Antigua to watch me teach using rhythm and rhymes, and she was just so amazed. Wrote a sub-thesis on that, on teaching with rhythm and rhymes. Find different ways to come
So
in.
you wrote, we're going to come back to your university life because there's one or two things I want to pick up out of that. But let's stay on this part. You wrote a sub-thesis on rhythm and rhymes.
On a technique of teaching with rhythm and rhymes.
What became of it?
Still have it, still use it, still a technique. But
you still have it?
Yeah, but no.
You still use it?
It is still different people use it.
Different ways.
Yeah, young teachers.
Okay.
It's a conceptualizing of what people now use. Listen, to be a good teacher, you first have to be a good human being. Okay. And in that context, you have all kinds of elements. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you were teaching lines of latitude. And children sometimes had the difficulty figuring out the basic lines of latitude. Why not turn that into a song? And so I used to say, "Let me jam a calypso on that." And they used to say, "Where are we going to jam?" So we work it out. And you might hear somebody say, "The Tropic of Cancer is in the north. And the Arctic Circle is in the north too. Well, the Tropic of Capricorn is in the south. And the Antarctic Circle, that's another line we're talking about. But right in the center, we have the equator. Yes, right in the center, we have the equator." So somebody say 23.5 degrees north. And the kids will say, "That's the Tropic of Cancer. 66.5 degrees north." The class will answer, "That's the Arctic Circle, sir. 23.5 degrees south. Well, that's the Tropic of Capricorn you're talking about. 66.5 degrees south. The Antarctic Circle does run that route, but right in the center, 0 marks the equator." And some little boy in the middle graduation say, "Sir, do it again. Right in the center is me and Alima." So when I came back, I said, "How was the exam?" He said, "Sir, the invigilator tried to tell me keep quiet. But when they do the map work, they say, right in the center, we got the equator."
I was going to save this for after we've done you, but right on this, I want to ask that. Do you think, because I recognize that, like you said, teachers use various techniques that they would have picked up over the time to get their message across to the students. But do you think that there's an opportunity for us in Antigua? Because you would have used calypso.
And not just calypso, poetry.
You would have used poetry and so
drama.
on and so forth. Right. Is there scope perhaps as a collective that we can revisit our curriculum to introduce to I'm trying to find the right word, to standardize the use of such, because for example, I may not be a teacher that is good at what you like. You see that you just did that so easily.
Yeah, so that's
I may not be good at that, but that doesn't mean that my students would not benefit from something like that. So could we have those kind of things recorded, so that teacher X is able to benefit from what teacher Y would have done and put into the system? But of course, it is all within some kind of structure.
It's about what you call teacher cooperation.
Right.
So there's some things that I'm not good at, I would get from another teacher. And it's about how you cooperate within the institution. Up to now, sometimes you go out and find the resources that you need to find to make the teach. You don't have to be the knowledge. And sometimes some of those resources are right in the class. So you utilize those resources that you have around you. And finding teaching is about finding the resources wherever they are, to make sense of who you're going to approach.
Right.
So you have to remember as a teacher that you're not the center of attention. You're there as a catalyst to influence change on behalf of students. You're not the sole holder of wisdom. And sometimes from those kids, you get ideas that could work all the time. Even now as an administrator, you get ideas from students who can walk up to you and tell you. I'll tell you, when I went to Princess Margaret School, just in the same line, because I'm going to go to Princess Margaret School later, one youngster said to me, "Sir, we had prize giving, and you have gifts and prizes for everybody who brighten, who get plenty marks and so on. What about us?" I said, "Us who? You're not doing the work here. You stuck in second form." He said, "That's the point, sir. Not much work done, but I keep this place lively. I'm the spirit of Princess Margaret. I keep the bright ones occupied." That's how stupid this is that. So from that, he told me, "Sir, you saw me at sports day." I said, "What happened?" He had on his dress uniform and a tie and a clock around his neck.
Day?
A clock? A clock around his neck saying, "Keeping time at Princess Margaret." But that's comic relief. Yeah. You can stay there. And then you wait on him. And he did well in school, After catch himself, went through, graduate, you wouldn't know. Came back to my school the other day doing spoken word and so take a picture of the principal. Yes, the point. So the point I'm making to you, there's something, once you listen to what they're saying, you can get a little bit from everybody. Teaching is like that too. Whatever the elements are, you use what works for you based on who you have in front of you at a particular time.
You went to UE?
No,
you passed through?
I did a course. A lot of work that I did with Mona. You see people talking about even online education. Distance education was taking place a long time. I didn't have no money, and then me get married quick, so me have to work. And then nobody would give me no scholarship.
Hold on, you didn't have any money, you get married. Where you met your wife?
In teacher training.
She was here?
Yeah, she did business education here at State College.
Your wife is from Antigua?
My wife's from St. Lucia.
So what she was doing here?
She was studying here. She did business education at Antigua State College.
Let's go again. So in the 80s, you were at teacher training at the time?
Yeah.
So you're at teacher training and you're at the State College, and your wife is what? How did she get here? Her family was living here?
No.
Or she, or teacher training?
No.
Right.
At the time, the OECS had...
I wanted you to explain that. That's
the OECS had different teacher training programs.
Right.
So different territories specialized in different things. So St. Lucia specialized in the technical vocational things like home ec, industrial arts. So a lot of Antiguan teachers went to St. Lucia. The teachers from the OECS went to Sir Arthur Lewis to study there.
Right.
And then Antigua was the model for business education.
Right. And so she was a teacher in St. Lucia.
Well, actually, at the time when she came here, she wasn't a teacher. She took a scholarship to do education. I keep calling her already. That didn't make no sense to me. She was in business. She graduated from a program that selected about 15 or 16 of the top business potential students in St. Louis go to Arthur Lewis in a special program. So she graduated from that program and initially was working with Price Waterhouse.
Okay.
I think her base is accounting at the time. Then there was a scholarship offering to do teacher education, and she left that job and took up the scholarship to be. So she hadn't actually taught.
Oh, so she went straight into the training component.
She trained first, and then she came back. And then she trained first and went back to St. Lucia and became Well, you're
Slow
in
down.
education.
She trained where?
In Antigua.
So she came to be trained in teacher education to do the business studies.
Yes, so
to teach business studies.
she graduated from the State College. She's a graduate of the Antigua State College. She did teacher training at Princess Margaret.
So the St. Lucia government invest in their students, sent you to Antigua to get the teacher training to do her business specialities. She interned at Princess Margaret School. How were you doing with the people students?
I didn't do anything.
I didn't do anything.
She made a good decision. The woman is brighter than me now.
You have always, ladies and gentlemen, he's always said that, and she just smiles and leaves him alone.
No,
so
that's
I'm
true,
inclined
really.
to believe. But so the two of you all met there, and clearly she decided she's staying in Antigua with you.
No, she went back to St. Lucia.
Praise the Lord.
She worked in St. Lucia for about 2 years, and then
She went to work on her bond, I suspect.
yeah, I think so.
Right.
And she worked at Castries Comprehensive, one of the biggest secondary schools in St. Lucia.
So why you didn't follow her?
Well, I like St. Lucia, and actually I would have lived in St. Lucia. St. Lucia is one of my favorite places at the time.
And?
But I think at the time we made a personal decision that I probably was a little further ahead in the school system.
Okay.
And she felt I had potential. But
Clearly she married you.
Well, every time
Good afternoon, Mrs. Green.
I apologize to her. I have not fulfilled my potential.
wait. So you're saying that you don't think that you have fulfilled your potential?
Oh, no.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll come to that. We have a little time.
In the eyes of people, not in my eyes. I'm just good. And she knows I'm good. She thinks I'm good, so it's all right.
Okay, fair enough.
There's certain things I can think that made me not seem to fulfill. I don't know. People have a way of being prophetic about me, and a lot of those prophecies never came true. I remember when I was in teaching college, Dr. Francis used to tell the class, he's going to be the director of education, and what is I going to... Well,
Dr. Francis said you were going to be the director of education?
Yeah.
It's probably your fault why you're not the director of education.
No, it's my fault. It's their fault.
How is it going to be their fault?
Yeah.
You don't want to left the school. We're jumping ahead of ourselves, but I have to ask, no. Do you want to leave being a principal to become an administrator at the ministerial level?
Listen, I think how we look at it right now is to say this. It makes no sense engaging in conversation that has no futile end. So why do you say?
Is that a way of saying no? It makes no sense engaging in conversation that has no futile end.
Put it this way.
Listen. Yes
the
or
only
no?
job I really wanted in education, and I wanted to be a school principal.
And you have it.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
I think I had the ability to do more, but I don't know if the system would ever trust me, because if I was director, I'd mash up a lot of things.
You don't say mash up. Say you would make things evolve. You see, maybe it's through how you speak. You can't say you're gonna mash up.
No,
Mr.
governments
Green.
would lose elections over me, because
well, I get it.
my
Sorry.
popular thoughts are not necessarily the engineer. You see, even with all them elitists in education about top 100, and say the first thing we don't draw a line to, if you say you're a big school, teach who come to you. Because you're the barley go. Because I don't understand how education give me that foolishness. That you go out of your way to send a certain crop of students, you pick off the top and send them there, and then tell me that's the best school. Oh, please. Best has to be determined on what you produce with the resources that you have. So you see, people don't trust me because I will create real background.
You don't feel people trust you. You people don't trust you.
I
Why?
know they don't trust me.
You're saying that because of how you outline the policies that you would engage in.
Depending on what. I only made an example now.
No, that's what I'm saying. So let's say we look at the whole notion. I'm inclined to. Well, we have a little difference of view on that, but we'll come back to that. I feel this is not about me, but I'm going to tell you. I feel that as much as I went to Princess Margaret School, and I think, and I know that Princess Margaret was the greatest institution, one of the things that made us great, especially in the 80s, was that we knew that high school and grammar school over there, now go harass them. Excuse my language. Because they are the elite, and we're going to take them out. And an academy was there. So it was academy for youth rally and sports. It was high school for debate on top of the farm. It was grammar school for academics. We knew that they were the ones that everybody held in high esteem, and we're going after them. And Mr. Benjamin made it clear, don't come back here without.
But it's the same theory, but the theory is not supported by any fundamental education, right thinking.
No, as I said, the students, students.
Listen.
So you don't think that there is room for any quote-unquote elite schools?
Me personally,
yes.
No.
So you're saying just
because
distribute the pool?
Let me explain to you what happens, right?
Yes.
People don't measure the inputs, right? They don't compare the input, but they always want to compare the output, which to me don't make sense.
Okay.
Right? Success is deemed from how far along you take somebody.
Agreed.
Right? So you're taking a point from point A to point B, right? You may never get that person to the point B. You might get them somewhere in between. But then what do you do with what you had? Right? Success is determined differently. So for years, right, I taught in post-primary schools. But post-primary schools wasn't necessarily an end to anything, right? Most of those students, if they were successful from your end, went on to another secondary school,
right,
or they went on to the world of work, or wherever it ended for them, right? They went on, right? How are you going to tell me that a system wasn't successful? I've seen teachers who took kids at age 12, 13, who couldn't read. And by the time they were leaving that school, they were able to read, they were able to calculate numeracy. And I've seen some of those students create that base. And some of them are PhDs, some of them are all kind of successful people in the world today. They're skilled people. So education, in a broader sense, is how you structure yourself. So there's a definition of what is a good school. And people must practice those elements that make you a good teacher and make you a good school. And sometimes what we create is this facade where the only constant that is there is the quality of the student. I can tell you from age 3, 4, which child is going to have certain academic potential. It doesn't need any rocket science, right?
To pull it out.
To pull it out. I have a daughter who in grade 4, some teacher marked an X in her book, and she was asking me, what is that? She didn't know what the X was. So I was like, wait a minute, what is that? So I said to her, that happens when you got something wrong. And she started one shit about it. Because from kindergarten to around that age, she hadn't gotten anything wrong. So please, tell me what great rocket science it takes for you to know. In every class that you teach, there are one or several students who are much brighter than you.
Agreed.
You understand? And that's the point we're making, is about how you develop some of these people to be better human beings and to be better fit to make innovations in the world in which they live in. That ought to be the mandate of education.
I agree with you, but then I have a question. If then the intent is to, as you just described, you made an example there where a secondary school teacher would take a student that's 12, 13, can't read, and by the end of that term, by the end of that student's tenure in secondary school,
bring them to a particular
point. Since you don't want to go into administration at the ministerial level, I can put you on the spot. I don't have to speak.
Why you keep saying that I don't want to?
You just tell me.
That's not true. I applied already one time and I came last. I'm not a customer in this last thing, so I didn't come to Tamaka again.
Okay, I'm sorry for that dead ear. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, this is a good time. I haven't done it in a while. This is Point FM, 99.1 FM. And you are listening to We're the Ones with Petra Williams. And my guest today is Dr. Collin Greene. Yes, it's been quite a fascinating afternoon. Dr. Greene, why is it that we have so many of our students at the primary level? What are your thoughts, on why is it that we have so many students transitioning from primary to secondary school who are not equipped with the tools to handle secondary education?
I could tell you our focus kind of wrong.
Explain. That is so general.
You can ask me that on ear now.
I asking you on ear. We back on ear.
Oh, we back on ear.
I just did a station identification of the program. Continue.
That. I want to joke.
Me done, me ready. Let's go. What's now break it for you? Let's go.
It's a good thing I didn't say something stupid. I thought we were doing advertisement or something. What stupid is this here?
Go ahead.
Yes.
That's why I give you water. You want a longer break? You want me to talk a little more?
No, it's good. Me good.
Okay, good.
What I'm saying, listen, and this is just me. I believe that primary education ought to focus on the fundamentals, right? Mm-hmm. And from those fundamentals, you then broaden the scope to create the foundations on which other knowledge and skills can be built. Mm-hmm. I think our focus in primary education at the very bottom is to strengthen the numeracy and the literacy skills of our students. The basic structure, that has to be the basic goal, and a lot more time has to be spent in that. So
Isn't that what they do?
I don't know what they do. Hold on, let me explain to you what I'm saying. Sometimes our schools have come with a lot of fluff, right? And instead of zeroing in, right, on the central goals of the school. Now, let me give you an example. Mm-hmm. Because there are theories, and it's just me, right? I may be wrong, right? How you got to teach picnic Spanish, then can't do English? So one would have to say, you'd have to focus on the ability to read.
But is Spanish a core subject now? Especially in the government primary? I'm talking about...
I'm not knocking Spanish.
No, I understand. I'm just looking because...
The point I'm trying
let me rephrase. As far as I'm aware, primary schools are focused on reading.
They should be.
Writing.
Mm-hmm.
Numeracy.
Mm-hmm.
Social studies.
Mm-hmm.
And science.
Mm-hmm. That's the basic primary school.
Right. And we have students who will leave school, who will leave primary school, going over to second. I'm not saying they need to be students, but they don't even have
Let me explain something to you, what I'm saying.
Right.
Also, in that focus on those things,
right,
the school has to have the ability to see where remediation is needed and deal with it. Now, in today's in education system today, mm-hmm. they're given more fancy terms, right? And I don't want to be problematic, but
you don't want to be problematic?
Let me explain. Everybody has an excuse sometimes why somebody not learning, rather than to focus on what it needs to take place to make the child learn. So when I went to primary school, learning was very basic, right? Very basic. Class was divided in all kinds of sections. You had A, B, C, and if you're in D, you're in real problem.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you understand?
Mm-hmm.
So what the schools were practicing then was differentiated classroom.
Right.
I think also what has happened...
And it worked.
Yes.
Okay.
That is the problem. Hold on. Let me try and sound philosophical and real bright for you now.
Yes, sir.
Let me put on the PhD head.
Yes.
But let me explain to you. I'm trying to sound philosophical. What I think has happened with some Caribbean institutions, including ours, we threw out the baby with the bathwater. That there were some things in terms of teaching that we were better than the North Americans and better than the Europeans at. And we have taken up some of their methodologies to our own detriment. If you understand what I'm saying. So let's say the ability to read was very heavily phonetical when we went to school.
Right.
Right? You have to sound it out and spell it out and
chant it
and
out.
do it and whatever. Mm-hmm. We've moved away. We start looking and saying. We have moved away from those fundamental things.
You're in education. Why?
Because the modern theories of teaching, right, that you learn even in the teacher training institutions begin to move us away from some of those. Even the place for memory and rote.
Mm-hmm. There are
some educators who, and I'm talking about philosophical people
right.
who man these universities mm-hmm. and so on, began to talk against those, right?
Okay, stop. I have a question right there. Could it be because one of the things back in the 70s and certainly the 80s when I went to primary school, one of the challenges I think that educators, that the planners faced, was that we had a high rate of dropout.
At where? Secondary school?
Everything. But from primary...
dropout in
I'm gonna give you an example.
No.
When I was going to primary school, there were more boys than girls that I could recall. And then when I worked on a UNESCO project in 2012, 2000, I think it was Education for All, UNESCO project I worked with. I can't remember his name now. Scarrett? Good man, short fella in education. Can't remember his name. And I was working with him on the data. And I was glad to see the data, so I went back to the 80s. No, it's not Mr. Sutton. I know Mr. Sutton well. I was surprised to see that, yes, there were more boys than girls aggregate in primary school. But when the transition happened, they ended up being more girls than boys in secondary school.
Yeah.
One. And two, overall, there were less numbers in secondary school compared to primary school. So I am wondering, I'm hearing you in the terms of the philosophical approach, but was the change of approach perhaps an attempt to stem the dropouts? I asked.
But dropouts where?
Of the system.
No, because depends on when, you remember up until, 2004 or so? 2004, just recently. When they
the universal secondary.
when they reintroduced universal secondary education. That's before 2014. The education system was divided into primary, post-primary, and then the traditional secondary. So children had a way of getting a second chance at the cherry if they didn't qualify or pass the standardized exams that were established at the time. The standards there were also very high and in some instances very cruel. True. You understand? I think a lot more children could have gone to secondary school and done well. Was it not for them common entrance exam where they tell children have to pass all and all kind of things. So what I do think though, I think our focus has to be on getting our children to the level and whatever it takes to get them there. I think some of the techniques the old techniques have to be relooked, and there has to be a mixture of both sections. There's UNESCO itself, as you mentioned, did a study at the turn of the century, a survey led by a man called DeLore, and the book is called Learning the Treasure Within. Right. And they have some suggestions in there about how learning and teaching would evolve in this period of time. And one of the points that he made was that you never throw away the treasure that you have. And the transition of the skill techniques from one generation to another is something that you cannot take for granted. And so the mentorship and so on with the new generation of teachers is something that we needed to pay closer attention to in terms of those skill sets that I would go, when I was at Glanville's, for instance, or in different places, when I was Bethesda, I used to just go watch a woman named Miss Payne teach a grade 6 class. And whenever I wasn't teaching, I would just go and watch her teach. How she had them under full control. And she was teaching everything. English, language arts, social studies, science, the one teacher hammering that. And the way she was able to maneuver them, and them days the failure rate was low. The same thing when I was at Glanville, there was a lady named Miss Brown. I was teaching the grade 6 class. And I used to just, when we get a little time, just go across and saw her
and soak it up.
And soak it up. And just there was something there to watch. She was a good teacher.
So is it happening still?
I can't speak for what is...
I'm not talking about the primary system now. I'm going to jump to you at Princess Margaret. Well, by the way, is Princess Margaret the only school you was a principal at?
Yeah. I was a deputy principal at Pierce Secondary.
Okay, for how long?
For a year.
I wouldn't joke. He made a hurry.
It's not me. I didn't even want to come down.
Wait, no, seriously, you didn't want to come down? What happened?
No, I wanted to remain at my alma mater and make a difference there.
Fair enough. And what happened?
And I just thought that young people needed to come down and let me alone up there, but they say that was the only option I had, and I had a young wife to feed. I need to go make a little more money to go build a house, and son. Principal must kind of live in a decent place. So me need a little raise and me go.
We're going to go back to education, but I have to pull you off on your personal part for a little while, because you mentioned your wife several times, and clearly I know that you all are happy together and all that and all that and all that and all that.
I would hope. I know I am happy. I hope she is. But anyway. I think she is.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Greene. Is this one for the third time? Boy, you're a brave woman. I should have, you know what? I need to have Mrs. Greene in here to talk about her experiences coming to Antigua, because that must be quite interesting. Well, apart from you. But yes, so how has family raising your being a teacher We're going to go back to education, but I want people to get a sense of you too. So being a teacher, being a principal, raising your family, how has that been? How in terms of, because I know being a teacher and being a principal comes with a lot of sacrifices of various nature. Did that impact on your home life? Were you able to strike a good balance?
I don't do anything that is going to have a negative impact on my home life. My first responsibility towards God is to raising my children. That's a father's responsibility. I don't engage in anything that is going to have a negative impact on that.
Okay.
My commitment as a father is taken from the book of Deuteronomy 6:6. So I don't have anything that negatively impact upon that. There has to be a positive impact where I'm concerned. So no, my work has never, whether it was in the organizations I've run the school, no, I have never allowed that. My primary responsibility is to ensure that my family life is of a extremely good quality.
It's even when you and your wife competed from a school level,
well,
or the competition was only obvious to us on the outside.
That's not family, that's work. But that kind of rivalry would be in my house too. Remember, in my household, you would have 2 PMites and 1 clear hall light.
Y'all advantage the little one. You didn't even make it PM, clear hall, PM. It's PM, clear hall.
No, because
Why?
I believe in choice. That's where they wanted to go.
Oh, they made the choice.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm not making a choice when I pick me. I guide you. And you make a decision. So when you fail or succeed, that's how you're going to blame me. Okay. So, but I provide the support. They choose where they wanted to go.
Before we go back to education in full, we're staying with education, but you have been involved in the trade union side of education.
Yeah, the teacher union.
Right, teacher union, sorry. How is trade? Is that trade union? Is that trade union?
Teaching is not a trade, it's a profession.
Okay, sorry, profession. My apologies. How did you get into being involved in the teachers union?
When I worked at Bethesda,
Austin Josiah
he was the president of the union that time. But so people talked about joining and whatever. I'm not even sure I knew what it involved. But I remember the very first meeting I went to, the first union conference I went to, they had a by-election for something. I must be sit down for about 15 minutes. I hear somebody say, I beg to nominate.
Pause for 30 seconds. I am very happy. The best decision I made was to be here with my doctor babes. Continue on. I just saw it. I had to read it. Continue now with the trade union. I don't have to say who that is, right?
You know the lady loved me.
All right. Go ahead. Yes. Continue. Trade union. So you went to a teachers union meeting. Inspired, I'm sure, dragged along by Dr.
By that time, everybody went.
Right. Okay.
It was just the way everybody went to the meeting.
So you
went
to the meeting.
It's just a way of life for you.
And you're at the meeting, and what happened?
Somebody said, I beg to nominate. I don't even know what they were nominating me for, but if they were nominated for leadership, why not?
Why not?
At that time, I didn't win the election they were nominating me for.
You didn't win? Okay.
So I went back to another meeting. They had another by-election, and they begged to nominate me again. And I have a colleague of mine saying, Green is green, man. He have to wait his turn. So I didn't win.
Green is green.
I didn't win that.
Okay. So that's 2 times.
Yeah. So the third time at the general election, I got elected as a member at large. At that time, Ruth Limerick, who was my former principal, she was the president of the organization. And I took a decision that at that time she felt that this was going to be the next person who they felt could lead the organization.
Who, you or somebody else?
Me.
Okay.
So the executive almost took a collective decision that many of us are going to be moving on. This was going to be the face of the organization, the person.
So that's grooming.
So they started grooming me.
Right.
I started traveling with her, which was kind of strange because it was a position that was supposed to be reserved for the senior members.
The traveling.
Like when normally it'd be the Gen Sec and the president would represent, but she took me along with her and seemed to have had an uncanny ability to interpret laws and to negotiate well, even from that element there. So I became a senior member of the team.
While you were still member at large?
Yeah, I was still member at large. I was that person. And then from there, the next term around, I was elected the general secretary of the organization and did that for 3 years. While I was the Gen Sec, I started moving around regionally.
One second. As a general secretary, were you still teacher, or for the period you were general secretary?
I have never worked full time for the teachers union.
Okay, because I think I realized that a few people.
There are no officers full time. And in my day, no, I never worked full time for the union.
So you had to work full. You had to be do your full time teaching duty and still do the duties as general secretary.
In fact, at that time, I didn't even have a car. So I would have come to a union meeting and beg ride go home if Bilkis bus stop wasn't in the dire streets. So yeah, if you understand, to get from one school to the other, you'd have to find creative ways to move around. At that time, Reginald Peterson, I don't know Mr. Peterson.
I know Mr. Peterson.
Who live in Liberta.
Liberta, yes.
And he would be giving me a ride to go home in the evening after a meeting. But he had to look for his cattle around by Patworks Dam. So I had to go with him to the paddock before and so event. And then Peterson driving so fast to say, Lord of mercy, hold my animal. But that was the spirit that was there. And I learned a lot. People like from Edris Joseph, the former principal at Villa. People like Cora Huggins.
I remember Ms. Huggins.
Yeah, these were some of the people who were around. And eventually I sort of became, from a professional point of view in the organization, that's somebody that people started looking at with that impression. And then after that, I became the president of the NBUT.
You were uncontested, or you bang up somebody? I don't remember.
No, the general secretary beat people.
Okay.
But by the time I got up to the president thing, I think there was unanimous consensus that it's best they left the crazy
Just
man.
leave him alone, yeah.
so yeah, and then started moving around regionally. Went to Canada. I was a John Thompson Fellow there. And then I started working with Skidmore College. I studied not just educational management there, and then labor relations. So I have actually have a degree in labor relations, which I don't utilize anymore. And so
you don't utilize it anymore?
No,
officially.
I retire. But from time to time now, I ended up as a John Thompson Fellow. I went to Canada where the Canadians were teaching us how to do. I specialized in negotiating.
Okay.
And they eventually, when I was finishing that course, said to me, no, but you really better than us. So I actually went back to run their bargaining schools in Canada for a number of years up in Winnipeg and so on. So I was a regular up in Toronto. I've probably seen a lot of the Canadians like me. I don't know what they saw. So I used to work extensively with them internationally. And then I had, from there, my career regionally and internationally just went all over the place. But did a lot of work within the Latin America sphere. Up in Europe, when I was a member of Education International, worked with them for an extensive period of time in that labor relation issue. So did work with the ILO working groups, UNESCO working groups. So that is the serious side of the work, really. And then I became the president of the Caribbean Union of Teachers.
Okay.
One of the younger ones that they've had. Did that stint, and I think what I'm best known for, even at the Caribbean Union of Teachers, is the ability to marry the industrial side of teaching with the professional side of teaching and see how both of them balance one another, because I teach teachers as a profession have a lot to bring to the table as to how education systems should emerge. And so if you're going to be at the table, you have to be well informed. So knowledge became a very important element. You have to find ways of reinventing yourself all the time. And if you're going to be at the table, then you have to bring good contributions to the table. And that is what I say to the modern teachers unionists. Teaching is a little different. We're one of the few professional organizations where we're actually professionals. We know what we're talking about. We're an organization of professionals. And a great part of our work is to give of ourselves to try and make not just the profession, but the education a little bit better, because a teacher's working condition is really a child's learning condition.
That is correct.
So inevitably, every good teacher unionist who's fighting on behalf making conditions better, automatically are fighting on behalf of the children of a nation.
I have a question. And forgive me, but this is going to be a little touches. So if I'm to understand you, and there are two parts, because something you said at the end I want to pick up on too, but I need to pick up on this first. So based on what you said to me now, with your path in terms of being a member of the teachers union and the kind of work that you've done regionally and internationally, yes, in terms of shaping teaching professions and the systems within which teachers operate and so on, What happened here?
Where?
Antigua.
Listen.
Sorry, what happened here? For those of you who didn't understand it, I went rogue.
What happened where?
In Antigua, in terms of, were you allowed to be at the table in a lot of the planning processes?
When I was at the teacher union process?
Not at the teachers union. I'm talking about from the admin, in terms of dialoguing with the ministry, in terms of dialoguing with the types of systems and processes and protocols we end up with that is used in our teaching profession or is used in education.
Well, I think if you follow historically what has happened to me as a personality, unless you're blind, you see how the story goes. I have always been someone, to me, who has been revered by the normal man, the everyday person. I get along good with the average Antiguan who asks me questions. The guys at the rum shop, the people at the market, the people around the road. I have a better conversation. I have never been widely accepted by the leadership in education as someone who has something wonderful. So let's put that on the table. They saw me
so
more.
You were despite the recognition regionally and internationally of the value that you bring to the table, you weren't allowed. I'm calling it as it is.
No,
if you want to change
when I was president of the union, you didn't need to allow me. I have the right to consult. You won't go in anywhere without consulting
I know
me.
you would consult, but I'm talking about, okay, so I think by the time, let me use a very concrete example. Universal secondary education. By the time we went back to universal, because we started out there, by the time we went back to universal secondary education and all the systems and how it was implemented and so on, would persons like yourselves who are on-the-ground teachers, I'm talking about people in the ministry now, were there opportunities for dialogue and inputs into the way we went forward?
I'd say, let me explain how that started. Remember, at the time I was a school principal.
Yes.
So I'd be a part of the principal's meeting and so on. If you look back at what happened with universal secondary education, the then government or ministry decided on a subcommittee to go forward. One of the mistakes they made early, that subcommittee was basically made of people who worked in the Ministry of Education. So there weren't any practicing teachers. So it wasn't necessarily me.
When I say you're right, okay, good.
They had excluded.
So if you notice, I broadened it to say, were you or any.
No. Right. So then what happened? That committee worked for a number of years. I think they were for 3 years. And then when they had...
But did that committee consult you guys?
No, not at that time. But when they brought the final document to the principal's score for consultation, then at the principal's score, what they presented, there's several of us who looked at it and say, well, you wouldn't see that in the public.
Right.
And see, well, we
so
need
were
to...
changes made in keeping with the recommendations that you guys made?
Yes, because when they put up the first proposal, I was one of the first persons who went up and said, I'm only going to deal with the first problem I see because I cannot bear these burdens alone. Somebody else.
You see, when you and I can tell you this from personal experience.
What?
When you give your recommendations in certain kinds of bottles, leadership doesn't appreciate it.
I don't care.
Oh,
the bottom line is that you're talking about. So eventually what came out of that, there are a number of other principals who went up and said what they had to say. The principal core made decisions. So what happened after that? They had scrapped the original set of ideas.
Right.
They set up a working group that was led by, at the time it was Dr. Patricia George. And it had in it a number of principals and another key component, planners from school. Because people don't understand that. Sometimes, depending on what you're discussing, the principal is not necessarily the best brain in the school. You may want somebody else. Right. Somebody else in the school might be better. So you may want to ask for the best representation from the school.
So you get the principal to give you that.
Yeah.
And you move forward.
Sometimes it is the principal, sometimes it's not the principal. Sometimes the principal has to incorporate people who are brighter than him on that particular subject area. And so we were able to make some changes. I think what happened with universal secondary education, though, when you're making those kinds of changes, then you have to support it with the institutional support and the resources to make it work. I am not a person who opposes universal secondary education. Right. I'm okay with universal secondary education. I think it gives children opportunity. But what I would say is that you have to equally understand that you then redefining secondary school as it is, a new secondary school, new brand of secondary school. And you now need to provide it with the resources that are necessary to ensure that students succeed.
And so you still think we have some work to do on the provision of the resources?
Think, yes, and I think we have gotten better, because I think individual schools have found a way to improve the product.
So it's not that from the from the level of the administration, ministerial.
Well, it didn't begin.
That there's a structured approach to getting better.
I don't think
individual schools have worked it.
I don't think it began that way, but I think now the Ministry of Education understands a little better what has to be done, and I think where they can, they're trying to provide the resources. But I think schools in general have to find ways. So, for instance, very early in the universal secondary education, I felt Clay Hall Secondary had a good program. I think they had a better program than us in dealing with some elements of it in terms of the universal secondary education. And then we have done some good work. And a lot of that work is some of it through corporate society. We have built a literacy center. We have had a literacy specialist with us. We have a team that's working on that end. And I think there's some good examples in some other schools as well as you go around. That I think All Saints Secondary was doing some good work. But the schools recognized that they had to play their part in redefining themselves. And they began the process. And I think now the Ministry of Education
is going to pull them together.
It's pulling it together. Okay. They have a number of persons who are now trained better, and it's just for them to utilize those resources in a meaningful way. I think the parent core as well have to understand that they too have a really critical role to play in the support.
My job
of
is
students.
to get the child to you, feed them, clothe them, support you, and just hand them, give you.
No, it's a lot more than that. And so it's a combination.
But there are a lot of parents that feel that way. What do we need to do as a community? You're speaking from the point of view of an educator. And many of us, and I raise this now because COVID has brought us some interesting experiences for us. When you look at social media and you see the complaints of the parents and the stresses the parents are undergoing and so on and so forth.
No, they don't call Alistair.
And when they're going on and I'm hoping that the audience didn't follow that one bit. Audience didn't follow that, right? Thank you very much. Yes. Right. So, from an educator's perspective, what is the ideal role of parents in the education process?
The parent is, they have very different roles, several different roles. The parent is that first interaction that a child has, right, is with parents. There's a theory in education called education full circle. And so it means that one has to ensure the quality of education that is offered to the parents, the people who will become adults, right? Because it's a circle. So it is the child who will become the teenager. It is in a circle, and then the teenager will become the parent and the adult.
Right.
And then the circle comes all the way around where these parents have children who become children again and then become teenagers. So if that circle is not complete, the role of the parent is to be supportive, is to be able to educate themselves on the best way that they can help their child. And about mobilizing resources doesn't mean that the parent has all the skill sets, because I certainly don't think the role of the parent is to be the teacher, in a sense. Not all the time. You can be a facilitator, no. I think what the parents have to understand is a mentality issue, and there are techniques to that, So you might have a child who's doing, let's say, chemistry, but you don't understand chemistry.
I hate
but
chemistry.
You can instill in that child that you have an interest in what they're doing in that chemistry class. Okay. So when you ask them, what did you do today? They get an opportunity to explain to you what you did today. And I think parents have to be able to, modern parents have to set priorities. Because people talk about COVID exposed a lot of things. COVID exposed a lot of the truths that
they just made it obvious to the rest of us.
Because the marginalization of children sometimes don't have anything to do with the availability of resources. It has everything to do with the mentality of the people, the parents. Because you have children doing mathematics, right? and they require a geometry set to do geometry.
Right.
But they come to school a $3,000 phone and can't access a $10 geometry set from a Chinese store. I still have the old iron can Oxford geometry set that my parents buy for me when I was going to school. So that is not a resources issue. That is an issue of choice. If you understand what I'm saying to you, it's a question of choice. Then there has to be working as a collective grouping to support the institution that your child is a part of, like attending PTAs and to be educated on what is going on, follow the communication, to discipline, to understand that discipline your child is your responsibility. So when you call me and say, oh, Mr. Greene, I can't get him
manage this one.
I can't get him to get out of bed to come early. Is you going to have to throw the bucket of water in the morning, not Mr. Greene?
Yeah, but I expect you to come home and deal with it.
No, I can't deal with that. I deal with my own children. And I used to tell my children I'm 50 times worse as a parent than as a principal. They make me tired of putting on the parent cap. So there's that sense of parent in control of what is going on and leading the children. I see parents come before me and I wonder, well, who? You know, parents to the sham?
Yes.
They strike up, the next time, what next time? Next time, my mother done beat me down long time the first time, so there won't be no next time. So what I'm saying, that general consensus. The other thing that parents have to do now is provide a sense of hope for their children and a sense of direction. Right? Put in front of them.
Without necessarily choosing for them.
No. Put in front of them the ability to have goals as to where you go. If hopeless people is a problem, if you don't have any hope, where you going to go? So that is how I tell teachers all the time, we have a responsibility in terms of teaching, the teaching of knowledge and skills, to teach children as if they don't have any parents. So if you have a parent and a good one, it's a plus.
Right.
But it's a teacher's responsibility to teach the child in the class. So I say, when I look at a graduating class, I take my share. With the part of the failure, I calculate my share and I take my share. This is my share. This is the principal's share. I know where I fell down. I can tell you what would be the teacher's share. Because you have to take a part of the responsibility. People pay you to teach, people pick me. That's a part of your responsibility. But there are a lot of other obstacles that could be taken into consideration by other people, right? Including the parental core. For instance, in terms of organizing ourselves as organizing ourselves into organizations, as parents, bringing our voice to the table.
So the good gentleman you mentioned before, his role is valuable.
I didn't say that.
Right.
I didn't say that. So the structure of PTAs operating as independent bodies and not just coming to the school, but also as a civil society group demanding what types of resources and so on should be in the school. That's the role of a parent. That's the role. So it's an individual role and also a collective role.
Does our society does the structure that we have now allow for parents and parental institutions to do that?
Yes.
Or is it does?
Yes.
You think so?
The law does that. The law gives you that right. If you read the education now, I can see the kind of power that the law gives the parents.
I was reading it this morning.
So I am not giving nobody no heads up for me stress. But any advice I'm giving, wait until me don't retire. Because if parents know the amount of power the law gives them, they can be real stress to school if they don't want to come in a positive way. If you understand me. Of course the law gives them that right. They abdicate the law. You go to a PTA meeting at school, you have to trick them into staying there for as long as you want to discuss what is going on, you know. It's either you're a real comedian like Mr. They enjoy joke and they laugh and they realize me serious. Or if I say, tell your parents, Collin Greene, say, if they don't come here and sign this book and say they're here, you're not come back here tomorrow. So when they come, their main role is to sign the book,
yes,
to
say
that they were here.
Come, right.
Rather than be there to listen, educate yourself, and sometimes not just listen, to challenge. Because there's no law that said principal always talk sense. Sometimes principals talk nonsense. And so parents have that obligation. I see it a lot in other organizations around the Caribbean, but that sense of participation and activity there, I don't see a lot in our schools, even in the pooling of resources. Take sports, for instance. Right? I used to give people the joke that I tell them, I have to go be the 10,000 parent. I have seen some really good sports people who have never seen their parent at a game. And we have to rally that sport. So I used to tell people, if PM had a sports day, where if only one of the parent come with the child, look how much money they make. I'd be rich. the school will be rich. You understand? But they have a mentality of just sending the child. So some people say, oh, I'm not sending the child to sports because I'm afraid some boy going to trouble them. Well, the best way is for you to go there and set them down beside you. If they know that I am here, that's not the best way to put off. Sit down beside them. When they run away, clap and carry on. And some people, the parent role is a motivator. Yes. It's a cheerleader. My head not good when you hear me carry on now.
We know. Ladies and gentlemen, you know. We all know, right?
Okay. Roll in the sun. And I used to say that it is also
Mr. Greene, really? Roll in the sand?
If that needed. And sometimes it's not transitional. I went to Villa School Sports Day.
What were you doing at Villa School Sports Day?
They were at my place. I went down. And Villa is one of my feeder schools. And they had a lot of parents there, you know.
Miss Felix.
They were a lot. The atmosphere was really nice. There are a lot of parents there but that sometimes don't transition to the secondary school. So I would tell you, like I give a joke all the time, I go down, we play in a football match against a certain school on my ground. I can't call nobody name.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Callias. How are you?
I never said that.
I just told Mrs. Callias good afternoon.
When I look on PM Field, surrounding PM Field, one ton of Prado, and all kind of BMW park up going for me place. Ton of vehicle and all kind of professionals, doctors with them masks and their scrubs still come. It's going to sit down for go bang me in from my place.
Mrs. Callias, all is well?
So I just called my football team inside and tell like, you know, the day I lose against them today, you know, find another school to go. Right? It's not happening here today. Anything less than 10 nuns, somebody gets suspended.
Mr. Greene, you were hard.
What?
You were brutal.
No. So
in your behavior.
No. Okay. So when we got one, if you hear the footballer, sir, one down, we good, 9 to go. So it's a private place. They must not come to your place and bang you. I'm very sorry. Well, if you understand. But sometimes, you know, parent, there's me one running from my head and carry on bad.
You know, normally I would support you, but you know, once you're against that particular school.
I never called
for a few years.
What you talking about?
Whichever one, the one with the Prado and all them people.
Well, different schools like that.
Yeah, but once you were that particular incident there, I remember.
But what you need to understand, what we're building in them is sense of pride.
But I agree.
You understand?
I quietly admired you. I couldn't say much,
right? But that's what I'm saying to you. If you had a combination of parents and so on in that, what a wonderful the atmosphere that's created. We don't need no hooligans, just us.
Agreed.
And so that is why we changed some of our activities to the afternoon, like with our sports. We made a drastic decision to put it in the evening. So you don't have an excuse. You go home, wash your kin, put on your pretty clothes.
Hello, you don't talk about PM, you don't talk about PM today.
Yeah, but we've had...
I have
so
one
that's
more
the one
thing
I'm talking about, the participation of parents on a broader level.
Teachers, are principals, especially in the government system, which you are part of, are principals free to assess their teachers and, if necessary, request the kinds of adjustments that they need to ensure that the overall product is better?
Yeah, this part of the role of the principal is at different levels, different things. So like in a secondary school, the evaluation is done by the principal, the heads of departments in each department for the curriculum area. And there's some sections of the evaluation where it's only the principal can carry it out. Not only the principal, the administrative staff. That includes the deputy principals as well. So the evaluation that is done in schools is both formative and summative. What I mean by that, you can, I could go to a class and assess a lesson for you and say to you, this is what you need to work on. This is what you need to...
And if they don't work on it, then what happens?
Well, in the final...
Over a period of time.
In the final analysis, when the evaluation becomes summative, that is at the end of the process.
Right.
The information is sent on to the ministry.
And then what?
It's whatever they want to do.
So that's what I'm asking you. Are you allowed, if, say, over 3 years, I've had a teacher that has not lived up to the expectations that I have for my school, can I have a conversation with the ministry and say, we need to address this? Or you just have to wait on them to get back to you?
No. You have the conversation.
Okay.
You initiate the conversation.
Okay.
The only difference with public school is the thing that you can do. What is required sometimes is not instant. You're depending on somebody else to make a decision that you would like to make. So it's like that you run a business and you're the boss. And he come late every day. You want it to cheat time, he come back the next 4 times. You say, you're fired.
Okay, but and so okay, all right.
You can fire him. You can give him a 1 letter. There's no improvement. A principal in a school doesn't have that luxury. You'd have to send the thing on to the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Education will determine that maybe we'll transfer the person to another school and hope that they change. We're gonna have to send it down. Eventually, the final body that's gonna do that is the Public Service Commission. So what I'm saying, the final decision is far away from the principal, but the principal has to make a recommendation. Sometimes you have to make the hard decisions as you go along. I've been a person.
Hold on. I have a, we are, you wouldn't believe it. We're almost out of time.
True.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to We're the Ones on Point FM, and we've been having a most fascinating conversation with Dr. Collin Greene. Mr. Greene, Dr. Greene, my friend, as we wrap this up, I have a last hard one for you. I am the Prime Minister.
You
me and Petra Williams.
Okay.
Me the Prime Minister. And and you, I have mandated you to be my Minister of Education.
That's the job. So what happened? Go ahead.
So I want to know, you are familiar with our education system now. What would be the 2 things, and I've given you 3, not doing 3, 2. What would be the 2 things that you would want to do as being fundamental to moving our education system along the path you think we should go?
Well, listen, I don't know
2.
if necessarily I would like to change that scenario.
Change it? You want to be the Prime Minister? Go ahead.
I don't want to be the Minister of Education either. That's why I want to change the
okay,
scenario.
Make the scenario what you wish. Go ahead.
I think for the collective leadership in education, which I'm more concerned probably the technical people, director and so on. We have to sit down. The first fundamental thing that we have to do is sit down and plan out what it is that we want from the education system. So you have to be clear. What is it that we're looking?
Aren't we clear now?
I do not know. Leave that there. You ask me a question. I am speaking to the question that you asked me.
Sorry, continue.
Right? You set goals in place and figure out what we need to do to get there, including the resources. Then the advocacy work to involve all the players to come to the table to get that done. That includes convincing the same politicians to understand the importance of educating a nation and how important that is. I think one of the ways we have failed.
But don't
hold on,
we know that?
I don't know if we know. Hold on, Cam, you tie me up, right? Right? You tie me up. I'm saying to you, unless you can't have goals without resources. If you understand what I'm saying.
Clearly.
So my thing is you have clear goals and then you back up the goals. Let me give an example. A lot of our people go overseas and say they bring back model. They're so impressed with the model. Like I hear in recent times, our Ministry of Education people like to go to Singapore. And I like to say to the people, when you come back, when you go place, you have to teach something now, bring back, even like a twang. You act like you can yank, and so when you go to New York and come back, you say, hello, whatever. Bring back something from the system that can work, but carry something. So people say, why not the Singapore model? But what is the Singapore model? They're not telling you what the Singapore model. They're not telling you what the average teacher makes in Singapore.
That's not important.
That's not important. So if you want bright people to come into teaching, which is important, you have to pay them bright money. So therefore, the terms and conditions of teaching have to set high standards and then support it. That's just one element, if you understand what I'm saying. The plant itself has to be conducive to modern teaching and where our children learn.
Executing the Singapore model.
Executing the Singapore model. Discipline must be core. Children must understand you come here and discipline yourself to love learning or leave the people place. So all those things have to be set in place. Corporate society have to understand that they have a contribution to make, and it's not a token contribution. So when you go to the school wall, you must see a plaque there of real investment in education. Not when you send them a letter, they send you back, where the money they give you back is less than the paper that they printed on. No, and when you go in, you see in this environment, you see all of the people and hold the people who are running the institution to high standards. So there's still a lot we have to do. We have to still see education as holistic, right? And understand all the avenues that are now necessary to let our children blossom and make. We are some of the most fortunate people in the world. We have naturally talented people. We have people who just run fast and grass and dirt, and nobody knows how is it that they do. So people play music, and people wonder, well, how did it happen when you go to a real place? And people say, how much? Where's your music room? So is your what band? What, you just happen to be lucky to find talented people who will make a name for Antigua. And so what we need to push now, that where there is that one wonderful talent, there's so much more existing in the classrooms of Antigua. So if you're looking for arrangers, panarangers, there are plenty more concordances and so on still around. And if you duplicate that from the talents in the school, you're going to be investing in the advancement of your nation.
And on that note, Mr. Greene, I want to thank you very much. It has been a most fascinating conversation. We're at the end of We're the Ones Wednesday today with Dr. Collin Greene. I want to thank my audience, both viewing and listening. And at this time, we come to an end as we go over to the Cabinet press briefing, which is already in progress. Good afternoon, everyone.
Would be barbershops, beauty salons, spas, and gymnasiums. Simply because the level of intimacy that is required in the provision of these services still gives the Ministry of Health some pause and some concern. This is something that we're reviewing on a weekly basis. I believe as we continue to evaluate whether or not we have been able to plateau out on the curve with respect to infections. And I believe over the next week or so, and the Cabinet